Yeah, can we just view them all on there for a moment?
Is that everybody that's with us? The applicant's not
Howard
here
and
yet.
Jason.
We don't have our applicant.
Nope, I don't see Tim.
I just talked to him.
Okay, it
There he
is
That's
August 12th, and it is 4:03, and I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll do roll call of planning commission members. Howard Tritz,
Here.
Joey Edwards,
Here.
Steve Stevens, Dave Clark Barrow,
Here.
Jason Marufo,
Here.
and Heather Lind here. County commissioners, Commissioner Fiedler, Commissioner Much,
Here.
Commissioner Edwards. Changes or additions to the agenda?
We have no changes or additions.
We have minutes to approve from July 22nd. Anybody has time to review those and wants to make a motion to approve?
I didn't see anything to change. Edwards would move to approve the minutes of the July 22nd meeting. Seconded.
Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, updates from staff.
So just to let the planning commission know, in case you weren't in attendance, the Board of County Commissioners did approve based on your recommendation for Temple Ranch sketch plan. And we may be calling on you to, we'd like to get some stakeholders together on talking about trail connectivity and thinking about it from a perspective of what we want to see generally, but also with a concentration around County Road 4. The applicant's really going to be looking for some guidance on how to meet the conditions of approval around that trail connection piece. So be reaching out to set up some stakeholder engagement on that. We have accepted a application for Titan Gold for a gravel pit mining to accompany their existing gold placer mine CUP that they have. That is not going to be heard until October. And then really excited today after our public hearing, we are going to introduce you all, some of you've already met, but we're gonna introduce you all to community builders and talk about our scope of work with them, the comp plan update, what that means, and kind of a value and visioning process that we're gonna go kind of a preparatory step to kick off that comp plan update. So really excited to have them joining us this evening to talk about that and give you a bit of an update. The other thing that I will mention is that I am not seeing our applicant with us yet. Does know the time of the meeting, so we might send him a quick email just to encourage him to get online. He will be with us remotely today, so. And I don't think, Cece, do you have anything else that you'd like to share?
I can always throw in a short-term rental update.
Yes,
But we
that's great.
have only 3 standard licenses left. And other than that, I think we have a couple more land use applications in the mix, but none that we've officially accepted and scheduled a hearing for.
So 3 short-term rental licenses available and no pending applications currently.
Yeah.
Nice.
Correct.
And I guess the other big news is that Lake County has hired a housing director that will be working in community planning and development. Jackie Wheelahan, she was previously the executive director of the Housing Coalition, or the Regional Housing Authority. And she has now joined the county as the housing director to work specifically on the county housing projects. And then we have extended an offer to a senior planner to join the planning staff. So we are hopeful that we're going to have more capacity build out in the department beginning in September. So pretty exciting news.
Would your senior planner, if they take that, would that make you currently full full capacity for the planning department?
For the planning department, we would be at what we've been projected to, that where we'd like to be. That would be myself, Cece, and the other planner. So that is really exciting news. We also have the planning capacity grant that we were awarded by DOLA, which will also, so there would be one additional planning support that we would have that would be specific to affordability review and looking at our code to carve out opportunities for affordable housing in our process. So that, we don't think that we'll probably be successful or really have this space for a full-time employee within the department. So we'll be reaching out, we think, through an RFP process for technical assistance and have a consultant help us with that. So we do have some additional funding from DOLA for 2 years. So I guess actually we'll round out our FTEs, but then we also have some additional funding for some additional planning support. So that's super exciting.
It's gotta feel good.
Yeah, we're really on the cusp of having a full house downstairs.
Great, thank you. Well, should we go into new business and let you start with staff report?
Sure, I think the only other thing that we could do is allow community builders to go first, but I'm gonna go ahead and start presenting. I think that Tim will probably be with us shortly. If we should, send him an email, he's 2 hours ahead of us, and so I just confirmed the time with him, I think an hour or two ago, of the difference between our time zones, so I think he'll be on very shortly, so I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sent him the Zoom link again, so he can hop on when he's ready.
Okay. Well, that's new business, file 24-22, which is Sugarloaf Mountain Lodge Group Camp Conditional Use Permit.
Okay, great, and if you don't mind sharing the PowerPoint.
And then I can do the opening statement first.
Sure.
Lake County Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will now conduct a joint public hearing. The statement I'm reading shall be incorporated into and made part of the record on these proceedings. The Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners have jurisdiction to conduct a joint public hearing on a conditional use permit application under section 3.6.1 of the Lake County Land Development Code. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the conditional use permit application should be approved. In considering that matter, the Commission will address the approval criteria set forth in section 3.6.1.f of the Lake County Land Development Code. The procedure to be followed in this hearing will be: 1, members of the Commission and the Board will disclose any ex parte communication. 2, county staff will make initial presentation. 3, the applicant may then make their presentation. 4, after that, any other persons are either supporting or opposing the application may present evidence. 5, supporting and opposing witnesses may be questioned by the Commission and the Board. Once questioning is concluded, no further questioning is permitted unless granted by the Chair. 6, the applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. The parties and witnesses are asked not to submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, please simply say so. The Chair will also require that all comments be made to the Planning Commission and the Board, and that there be no dialogue between the applicant and members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, the Chair will entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and the Commission will discuss and weigh evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will then retire from the meeting, and the Chair of the Planning Commission will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take form of one of the following recommendations: 1, approve the application with no conditions. 2, approve the application with recommended conditions. 3, approve the application with newly identified conditions. Or 4, deny the application. The planning director shall make a record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the recommendation of the Commission. The Commission's recommendation will be in the form of a statement of motion. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the Commission or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Hearing none, I will now ask each Planning Commission member and then each County Commissioner if you've had any ex parte communications to disclose, and if so, to please do so now. And sorry, Cece, can I just see that screen of who's on at the moment? Howard Tritz,
None.
Joey Edwards,
None?
Steve Stevens is not on, Dave Clark Barrow,
None.
Heather Lind, none, Jason Marufo,
None.
great, thank you. Okay, staff may begin.
Okay, thank you so much. Go to that first slide just to show the location here.
Heather, if you wanted to ask, Commissioner Mudge as well, if she.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Mudge.
I have none.
None.
I'm so sorry.
I skipped right over the commissioners. Okay.
Okay, so this is a, just a GIS screenshot to give you an idea of where this parcel is located. It is part of the, Michigami and the Alice claims. It's a little over 19 acres. And it's a small portion of the land that's owned by this applicant. He owns approximately 875 acres, in this area. If at any point you're interested this evening, I did bring the Sugarloaf District map, because there has been a long history in this area. There is, while this area is not on the national priorities list, it is an area that has had extensive historic mining in this area, so I'll just pull it out and speak up here if it look at it. But it just kind of gives you an idea that there's been a lot going up in here over the years, and that there have been a great deal of grassroots reclamation work that's been done in this area to keep it off the national priority list. And so when the application came in, we did reach out to the Bureau of Reclamation through Craig Bissonette, just to talk generally about this area, and also, recognizing that through Trout Unlimited, the Bureau of Reclamation, the watershed groups, CMC, USGS, just various different groups, they have worked on extensive reclamation and rehabilitation in this area. Specifically, the two claims that were used at the time that the home that's being proposed to be now utilized as a lodge was built in 2008. The area was looked at for any type of geologic or mining impact or hazard associated with the build. So while this area has been subject to considerable reclamation, the parcels that we're looking at today that are highlighted on the map are the only part of this holding that the applicant is asking for consideration of. So the basis of this application today is only contained within those 19 acres. The applicant, when he joins us, he may want to talk about and share that he is currently working with the Colorado State Forest Service on a forest management plan in this area to reduce the fire risk in the area and improve the overall health. Overall, when we have spoken and engaged and gone out on site with Mr. Costello, he is really committed to a rehabilitation and preservation of this land. However, he is suggesting that is a large undertaking. And so the idea to be able to add some degree of economic vitality adds to the sustainability of the overall management of this extensive acreage. And that is the basis of today's application. So he is looking to utilize the lodge. This is a picture, an aerial of it. It was not built by the current applicant, Mr. Costello. It was built by the previous owner, Tom Bodette, and as a residential home. And in 2008, it is a nicely appointed home with 5 bedrooms. And we have reviewed the facility in respect to the occupancy that is being asked for under this group camp. Before this area was rezoned, it was it agricultural forestry or rec? It was rec, I'm so sorry. So it was rec, and they were able to apply for and receive a short-term rental license. When we rezoned this land, short-term rental was no longer available. However, group camps are still conditionally allowed. And so they're reaching out to, ask for, that same 10% occupancy. We're gonna talk a little bit about, in the conditions for approval, when we started down this journey with Mr. Costello, he has a lot of different ideas in this area, that he might want to, realize other small gatherings. Educational purposes, learning about the forest health management program that he's doing, potentially very small wedding receptions, day use. And whereas we have not been really able to look at the application as on the lens of the whole 875 acres, we are suggesting that maybe through a condition of approval, we could administratively consider these day uses that don't include overnight occupancy to expand the degree of use on the 19 acres to consider small groups of up to like 30. We wanted to keep it a moderate number that could allow for an administrative review so that the applicant wouldn't have to go through a conditional use permit review, realizing that we don't have a amendment process in the code. We may someday, there'll probably be a recommendation that comes through our kind of land use review that we're going to do coming up for the comp plan. But currently, the way to expand your degree of use is to go back through the conditional use permit process again. And so, we thought that this would be a way that the property owner could expand the degree of use, work with CPD staff to consider things like sanitation plan, emergency management, those kind of things when we would increase the density on the site, and we wouldn't be using the infrastructure for the house. The septic system is an engineered system that can support the 10% occupancy for the 5-bedroom home. But if we would increase the amount of occupants on site for events and such, we would want to consider looking at those items. Another condition of approval, and I guess we could go to those. The first one is a winter operation plan, not unlike, you may remember the Iron Mask CUP that we did for a group camp in the backcountry. And they wanted to use the Junction parking lot. And so, we have not determined, and we don't want to, the application didn't speak to whether or not they would only be utilizing the lodge during the summer when there aren't seasonal road closures. And if they would want to use it in the winter when we know that County Road 4 and 9 are closed. So we want to look at a winter operation plan, not unlike that other backcountry group camp that wanted to use the Junction. Here there'd be consideration of what's the parking plan. If you're gonna park at the dam, through the Homeland Security, we have to get coordination with the Bureau of Reclamation on using the dam for parking. We also need to consider any other uses that are gonna be on the county roads for winter access. So we've got outfitting and guiding that is in that area as well. So we just wanna do that overall coordination piece. If winter operations is part of Mr. Costello's plan. The other condition is, again, we've asked this for Sagestone Group Camp, Iron Mask Group Camp. We generally want to make sure that when we are approving group camps or commercial uses in the backcountry, the guests are provided with the best local practices around high altitude, around winter conditions, around access, kind of being a good player in the backcountry. So that has been a standard that we have applied and asked for on all group camps. And so we would just continue to, it's a way that we can ensure that our guests to Lake County are really fully informed. It also is a way for them to be informed about good fire practices, which obviously on this particular parcel is going to be of the utmost interest to the property owner. So it's just, we're asking for a review of that policy where we can provide additional information from our different agencies, emergency management, to provide a good, robust guest guide. And that we would just work with, CPD would work with the property owner prior to them having guests on site so that we could add to and provide feedback on that guide. And then the third condition is the one that we just talked about, and this would allow them to go through an administrative review with up to an additional 30 people in addition to the 10 overnight guests for looking at things like impact mitigation, adequate safety and facilities, so that we could vet that on a case-by-case basis with the applicant. There is one more condition that was in the staff report that we're gonna suggest is probably a bit onerous, and there's a better approach at the way that we would suggest that. So in your staff report, that would be condition 4, I believe, and it required a noxious weed management plan based on a recommendation from the Lake County Soils Conservation District, and that we would confirm that that condition had been met once it was delivered to CPD, then we would provide it to the district. However, typically we are more concerned about a noxious weed management plan when we have new construction and there's been a disturbance to a site. That's more prone when we need to be thinking about an actual management plan. In this particular instance, working with the Colorado Forest Service, the applicant has already been able to identify there's some Canadian thistle on site. And really, in speaking with the applicant, they welcome just establishing that relationship with the district, and likewise, the district would very much, I'm sure, like to provide support and more than willing to come out on site with their facilitator, potentially Harmony Jump, to just help the landowner maybe better understand the identification of noxious weeds. And the applicant already has some ideas of how to do that in a non-invasive, environmentally non-invasive way. So I would just suggest removing what we think is probably a overly onerous condition of approval in number 4 from the recommended or the suggested motions that we provided in the staff report. And then, of course, like always, anything that the applicant would offer today on the record or that was included within the application become binding conditions of approval. And I think that is the culmination of everything that staff has for us. Let's see if have we been joined by Mr. Costello?
No, do you mind hitting exit on the keyboard underneath the map?
Oh, I'm so sorry, yeah.
Or just escape. Thank you. Yeah, he's not joined us.
Okay, I can only think, because we talked not very long ago, that some type of emergency must have arisen, and he may not be able to join us. I will tell you that if the planning commission and board are in agreement, he did not have a presentation to share today. And when we spoke today, he felt as though he would just be here to answer any questions that you have for him. So depending on your level of questions or concerns, we may be able to proceed without him, or if you feel there are additional concerns that need to be vetted with him present, we could table this until he could join us. So he didn't communicate any concern over the conditions of approval, and, was, when the staff report was delivered to him, and he and I did talk through, the removal of number 4 as a recommendation from staff. So, I will leave it to your discretion, but I don't think that I'm aware of any, concerns. I will say that he was grateful for the idea of being able to vet any future uses on site within that density as an administrative review. We had talked about the possibility of applying for a special event facility. However, so many of the kind of things that he had thought about are still very much in a conceptual stage. And so without really a robust plan, it was difficult to fully vet that through the CUP process. So what we're suggesting would not include all 875 acres, but rather just the 19 acres.
So did he indicate to you that parking, at least for the summer piece of this plan, since we don't know winter, was going to be on site?
Yes.
Okay. And so we just don't know the winter plans, which that would be my biggest thing to understand tonight, but we could always condition that, I suppose, a little bit more even than we have it here, but I think even beyond parking, I guess your safety guide approval helps with that, but it's just, it's a different beast when you're talking about that. A question I had initially was, is this a staffed group camp?
It is not. The manner in which it would operate would look similar to a short-term rental. They will book. He indicates that he would use local support as far as maintenance and cleaning. He would employ people locally. He has not indicated in the staff report any intention of hiring a property management company locally. But I don't know that he wouldn't. In the past, when it was a short-term rental, I do think that he was, looking for opportunities to engage in that manner. I'm trying to remember, it seems as though maybe he had used High Rockies at one point to help with the short-term rental previously. So wouldn't be staffed by, he doesn't talk about that in the application. He did use some local support previously through management and does say that he would hire locals to provide support for maintenance and cleaning.
So is there parking on site on that 19 acres to accommodate 30 people currently?
There is considerable parking around the property where I think given the nature of the way in which Mr. Costello typically addresses on-site activities, he would probably promote carpooling and look to diminish the degree of use. Those are things, though, that we would fully vet through, the expansion in the use. We would always encourage, there is room, but I think that in this area, you might want to
And this means
look for
potentially 15
opportunities.
cars,
Right.
kind of. And if you did administratively approve an event space, day use event space, would that require the building of additional bathroom facilities?
Now, if they were temporary for day use, it could be accommodated with porta potties.
Sure.
The access is good to be able to get in. I've been to the site a couple times.
The intention would be to bring in additional facilities.
Yeah, they would bring them in, not to build out additional, like a second OWTS.
Thank you.
It would be to bring in temporary solutions.
Any other questions? Any questions from anybody, any of our, commissioners on Zoom?
So Jason has a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
So this would not fall under the STR guidelines because it would be special use, correct?
Correct. This is a different type of use. This is a group camp vacation lodge. I know on the agenda it says group camp. We
Right.
group camp vacation lodge, so vacation lodge, yes.
Yeah, so my concern was that if additional facilities are brought in for black water or sewer water, or sewer facilities, however you want to call it, waste management, that isn't something that short-term rental license holders could do if they wanted a larger group of people or something. They're tied to that. And this is okay. I just wanted to clarify that. That's all.
No, good point of clarification. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Anne.
Sure.
Just to clarify though, I can definitely appreciate I mean, I don't really think they asked for the special event permitting in the permit or the application, but what level, if that does become a regular part of their operating out there, would you want them to come back to revise their CUP? And I guess I have the same question with the winter, if they didn't specifically ask for winter activity, but they might develop into that. I definitely, again, completely appreciate most businesses here that are successful have evolved and developed over time. So, don't necessarily have a problem with that. But again, I guess, do you think that you'd have them come back to revise the CUP?
So I would say that the suggested conditions would allow some leniency for not applying for a new CUP unless there was something unmanageable or something that through the administrative review felt as though it couldn't be managed administratively with that increase in density up to 30 non-overnight guests, as far as accommodating additional occupancy on site. And then for the winter use, again, if the typical items could be managed, if it didn't increase the degree of occupancy or change the use drastically to incorporate outfitting and guiding. We are aware that there is going to be a separate application, we believe, coming in to look at outfitting and guiding. They wanna lease a portion of the property to allow outfitting and guiding, and so we'll be looking at that through a separate CUP. So, the limitation in not needing a new CUP would be not exceeding more than 30 people through the daytime hours, and that would not be spending an overnight occupancy. And then for the winter operations, as long as we are able to work with them to coordinate those other uses through the additional tools that we have this year with the commercial recreation permit on county roads. If we weren't able to coordinate that, he has indicated that in the past when they had a conditional use permit, they did this maybe between the space of 2 years, I think twice, for a small amount of time. One time, the HUDs had overbooked and they needed, there was some kind of a mistake. So he doesn't imagine, like you said, initially that would be a market that they would be really targeting. But if that grew in the degree of use, and they were wanting to expand beyond either, something that was managed within the conditions, then yes, you would bring it back for a new CUP. Or if it included any lands outside of the 19 acres. So today would just be conditioning an entitlement on the 19 acres.
Yeah, I think the 30 people is good and that it's not overnight. I think if it did go beyond that and then that kind of becomes the primary use, right, as a special event venue or whatever it is that we're calling it, I think then it is a different use and it should come back. Because I would look at this through a totally different lens, but if it is something that's kind of auxiliary to the main use and we're talking about 30 people, I can get on board with that. And you're speaking to the winter operations being, as long as you can manage the access, parking and safety guide within that condition, then you can administratively handle winter. But if beyond those things, those can't be managed or there's question on them, I guess that's when it gets kicked back to us for an amendment.
Right,
Okay.
you know, we've got user conflicts, things like that too.
So
Right.
how would it flag? How would you know that there were concerns? It sounds like it's a 5-bedroom facility that they wanna use for weddings. That type of event.
Right, if it went to,
I
yeah, if
mean,
it
what
went
would,
into,
what would flag it for more
the
intensive use in another review?
increased degree of occupancy and if for the use part. So if it's more than 30 people on site or we have more than 10 occupants, obviously the lodge can't accommodate more than 10, or if the density increases. Or let's say it's a music festival,
Right, sure.
for example.
Yeah,
you know,
something that would seem to be obviously a larger
something
thing.
that we've got a higher degree of impacts than, you know, contemplated with, you know, there's just more degree of impact. But immediately it would be that it's regularly being used just as a special event facility or the occupancy wants to be increased. Those would be the main two.
And since it's an unattended lodge.
Right.
No great way to tell really.
Right. I mean, there is, you know, they will still have to come in, you know, similar to a special use or a special event permit. You know, I see it being the same kind of administrative review as that. If we believe that the degree of impact has been substantial, then we have every right to review under the code. If we think the degree of impact was greater than disclosed to us, then we would have the right to review the permit.
One more
Seems
quick
good.
comment?
Yeah.
I do think that it makes sense to remove the noxious weed requirement, cause that's probably part of the forest management plan and,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that's, I mean, yeah. So, for whatever it is worth, I think that's appropriate, thanks, Dean.
Yes. Thanks for that input too.
Yeah, I mean, I think my only like slight little uncomfortable feeling about this is like, I just don't want this to be the beginning of the workaround to a short-term rent out of a short, cause we intentionally didn't wanna do short-term rentals because I'm gonna find the PC way to say this instead of what's on the tip of my tongue. Because there's lots of people who come to this town and have no idea what they're doing in the backcountry and shouldn't be in the backcountry by themselves. And so that's my only piece to this that still like kind of rubs me the wrong way, because I feel like we're just working around the short-term rental regulation on this a little bit. Although his house is larger and I think this is a different than a 2-bedroom STR. It's not a little cabin up there. This really is going to be more appropriate for groups. I would consider a hut a group vacation lodge. So I do think the property itself does lend more towards the vacation lodge. I just guess I wanna say it out loud that I don't want this to seem like that's what's happening and that that's why we're going down this road is because it actually, the property itself fits a vacation lodge more so than just an STR. But I want the applicant to be held to that standard, which is hard because we don't have, great enforcement slash ability to monitor it, right? And so, but I just feel like luckily his access is fairly decent, at least in the summer. But in the winter, I think that's where is he operating this in the winter? Because then that changes my perspective on who should be allowed to go up there by themselves to cross the road. I mean, the number of people I hear that get stuck in the snow across the road closure sign is just unbelievable to me. So like, it's just like
It's a
those
challenge.
kinds of things, So I guess I would wanna stress that winter safety guide should be more robust than the regular summer safety guide. Especially if there's not great service out there at all, things like that. Like, it just would be good to know that if we're approving something like that, we're doing it in a way that is not gonna cause more problems in the backcountry. So I think that would be the only,
Yeah, anything
Little
past the
point.
berm in the wintertime increases risk dramatically.
yeah, no access. So I would really, if winter operations are happening, I feel like that's a big, like, you have them all here, access and parking are the things that would have to be worked out, but I think they really have to be worked out to ensure safety and also just like our resources, our searching out everybody's resources would be better off that way. So those are the only things, is I just wanted to kind of like put that.
And to your point about distinguishing this as a lodge versus a short-term rental, we actually through a short-term rental compliance, as we were going through the backcountry review, we had reached out to Tim to tell him that the manner in which while he was able to have a short-term rental license, the manner in which he was using the property was much more a lodge. He was, at that time contemplating bringing in the outfitting and guiding. And so through the rezoning research and conversations, we were having conversations with Tim regarding that, the manner in which he was utilizing it, it was much more a lodge setting. It was much more of an experience than it was just a short-term rental. So we had already told him that we would no longer, he needed a conditional use permit. So before the zoning was even done, we had told him that we were no longer his use was just not well defined by a short-term rental. So even though that might be kind of the occupancy of it is similar, we had already reached out for compliance to tell him that it would require a CUP moving forward, whether it stayed under the previous zoning or was rezoned into backcountry. So the reality was that we would be working through this conditional use permit process either way. So I think that's.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure we put that on the record, that this is why we're doing this, and, yeah. Any other questions or comments, anybody?
I just have a general question about the winter guidelines. Is there a date or state of weather that defines the winter time versus the summertime in that guide?
We would want them to acknowledge that. Specifically, some of the things that we'll want to be indicators are when the road closures occur, when access is compromised, when you can't access the property by the normal standard road access would really constitute that, and we would look for the guide to define that. But what would really determine it, what I would imagine, is that we would define it as when the road access and the closures occur.
This last winter in particular, there were several weeks before they closed that road that the road was not passable. So that would be an interesting thing to try to make clear, because a passenger car, there's no way they could have made it even though the road wasn't yet closed.
I think that's a really good point. So I think that it's ensuring that once there is limited access or no access. So whether or not the road closure has occurred,
Right.
or not, it's once the road is not passable by, motorized, access.
It's gonna be
Well,
an interesting.
and vehicular, because snowmobile. But I think that's a really great point, and we would be looking, so this would be putting that onerous on the applicant and CPD to review those things, and like with any decision that's administrative, we always have the ability to elevate that. If staff were to determine, and now as we are growing capacity to be able to manage these, oversight of conditions of any approval, if we were in a position that we were uncomfortable about making an administrative decision, these can always be elevated to the planning commission. Or board.
I suppose if somebody got stuck trying to get to the lodge, eventually you'd find out about it.
Yes, we would hear about it from lots of
Right.
people,
So
I am sure.
that might take care of itself.
Yes. And there's certain other ways that we're gonna, obviously, adequacy of, how many porta potties are being, we're going to tell them what that ratio is, and knowing that that's how many are on site. There's ways to kind of measure the use and make sure that, things are happening in the way that they should. We also now have code enforcement, and it would not be, out of the call of duty, nor would be allowed within our code to do a site visit during an event, just to ensure compliance. So we do now have that ability through the department as well.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I do. This is Howard. First off, the audio is not coming through too good on my computer anyway. I don't know about the rest of the folks that are on Zoom, but question you might have covered it and I missed it, but the winter usage, the parking areas. That area at the dam where people park that want to ice fish or go around the lake, there's a very limited area there to park. And I wouldn't want to see a resort area close that off to the rest of the users. And like I said, you may have already covered that and I missed it, but that is one thing. And I noticed that Mike in his comments too said he definitely didn't want to be plowing all of the road, and we wouldn't want to see that because of the other uses recreational. And by the way, I have to be leaving at 5, but if it's apparent you got enough people there without my vote. And anyway, thank you. And Ann, I've been trying to contact you via the computer as well as texting, and I evidently haven't got them. Give me a call sometime when you have a chance soon, please.
I certainly will. I haven't
Okay.
received a text message, so I'll have to, but I will call you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Sure.
Good night,
Thanks,
Howard.
Howard. That's true. How would it be possible to stipulate a parking requirement, especially once the dam is closed and you get the outfitters, the great big outfitters trailers down there?
So,
There's
I mean,
not a
that's,
tremendous amount of parking, yeah.
there won't be, but now because we have the outfitter, so outfitter and guides will need to have an operational plan, so we can measure the degree of use along with our commercial recreation permit that we've created this past year, so that we can manage, or the hope, we believe is the outcome, is that we'll be able to manage like the Leadville Junction, like the area at the dam, different areas where we do have winter recreation use, and managing, who's in that area and making sure that it is not being dominated by just one group and that we do have adequate. If this use is being contemplated in the winter, and it means one vehicle, or do they manage to not park there and they make other arrangements somehow? Maybe they contract with one of the outfitting and guides that are coming in now to get a CUP here, so
Well,
this
and
might
their
fit
intention
in.
is to be an outfitter as well, so they
Right.
might be able to manage that
That's-
transport and offsite, or at least remote parking.
Exactly, so that may be part of the outfitting and guiding permit that's coming in as part of the proposed operations on a portion of this area. So that would obviously work nicely together, and so that we're not overburdened, we don't have separate users, we just have the one singular.
Yes.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
Is Jason still, or did he have a new
No, I
question?
think,
Is that-
Jason, your hand's just still up, right? You did, or do you have another?
Oh, I don't have another question. I will
Okay.
remove that.
No, you're fine, thanks. Okay, I can entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Jason,
Edward seconds.
all in favor, aye?
Alright,
I,
I,
Great, thanks.
Did you have any other questions, Sarah?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Do you wanna call me back? Somebody?
Oh, sure, when it's,
Okay.
Oh, yeah, when
yeah,
we're
for
moving
the
on to
community
the.
builders,
Yeah.
yes, we will,
Great, thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, does anybody wanna make a motion to start discussion phase?
I move that we start discussing.
Well, you can make a motion, the motion for approval or denial will start that, so if you want to, yeah, pick one of those motions, then we can get a second and start discussing that motion if there's any discussion to be made, or we'll vote on it.
And here's the motions, if anybody wants one.
If
I
anybody
won't
has-
do that from here just in case the audio is weird. I don't want it to be all choppy.
We're hearing you guys fine, but if you
Yeah.
guys are hearing us bad, that's not good, okay.
are you having trouble hearing us, Jason?
It seems to be all right most of the time. Maybe it was just Howard's. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Okay,
Start a motion for approval.
yeah,
Okay.
we hear ya.
Oh,
Oh,
perfect.
and here's this one out.
Oh,
It's
perfect. Great, Forrest Gump.
Yeah, there you go, okay.
Awesome. I move the planning commission recommend conditional approval of file number 24-22 Sugarloaf Mountain Lodge CUP to the Board of County Commissioners with the following conditions. 1, the applicant shall confirm the intention to operate during the county road seasonal closures. Winter operations during this time shall be subject to access, parking, guest winter safety guide approval by CPD prior to accepting guest bookings. 2, applicant shall furnish the guest policy reference to review or for review by CPD and appropriate local review agencies, so additional information can be added as needed to ensure guests are aware of best local practices and resources while visiting the Lake County backcountry. This shall be completed prior to the first arrival by guests. 3, the applicant may apply to CPD for review and approval of day events which do not include overnight lodging for up to an additional 30 people. These events shall be reviewed and referred to any review agency CPD deems appropriate to consider without limitation, impact mitigation, adequate safety and facilities. 4, all statements and representations made by the applicant in its application and in hearing shall be binding and considered as conditions of approval. And further finding the approval criteria, section 3.6.1F have been met as analyzed and evidenced in the staff report dated 8/12/24.
Do I have a second?
Edward seconds.
Any discussion on the motion?
Will, I assume that they will provide their guest guidelines for the summer and guest guidelines for the winter to CPD for pre-approval?
That is the intent behind the condition. It wouldn't be just, it would be year-round to see if we have an opportunity to share information to make sure that those guides are, keep people really well informed.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, I'll do roll call. Howard Tritz, if you're still on.
Say that again, please.
I'm just voting to approve the motion if you're still on, if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, you're
still
right.
on. Okay. I vote to approve.
Okay. Jason Rufo,
Approve.
Joey Edwards,
Approve?
Dave Quickborough,
Approved.
Heather Lind, approve. Okay. Motion carries. It now goes to the county commissioners
Next week?
next
Yes.
week.
And do you have Sarah's, do you wanna tell Sarah she can come on back?
Okay,
Just under attack.
Perfect, that'd be great, thank you.
and we'll wait for Commissioner Mudge to come back in, and then we will, have our conversations with the community builders.
So long, everybody.
Good night, Howard.
Bye, Howard.
Okay, just entered the waiting room, so I think we'll go ahead and advise him, so he must have had the time wrong.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll go ahead and, as soon as he can hear us.
Unmute video.
Hello, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Howdy. Howdy. Oh, you guys are all little bitty teeny things stuck up in the corner of my phone.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we must have had a mix-up on the time, even though I know you and I spoke about that. But we started at 4 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. We did send you an email, but the Planning Commission and the board went ahead and held their public hearing. And there is a recommendation from them for approval based on the staff report that I provided you with the removal of condition 4 that you and I talked about. You know, I just communicated with them, great work that you're doing with the Forest Service, and that you would welcome an opportunity to talk with Harmony Jump in our local district.
Yes,
So if
I
there's
would love, I'll be up there not too long. When I do, I would love to meet with them, have them come out, see if there's any resources they can help with to understand how to deal with some of our invasive issues. There aren't invasive issues in this part of the property, but we do know we have Canadian thistle issues. The Forest Service has noted that, and that'd be great help.
So very good, so we have that recommendation to take to the board for approval on next Tuesday. And we will make sure to confirm with you so that we have our timetables set up correctly.
Is that something I go to as well, or is that just something you guys do?
So we would love for you to attend it, we can let you know when you're going to be on the agenda, but that's when the board makes the final decision. But the recommendation from the planning commission is for approval based on the staff report.
All righty. Let me know and I'll try to be there.
Great, thank you
And
so
at
much.
the meantime,
Tim.
if that, if the person, I can't remember what it was, water conservation or something, I can't remember, but the gal that was interested in the weed thing, if she wants to, if you want to give her my contact information so she can just email me or call me or whatever, that would be great.
We will absolutely do that coordination with you.
All right. Awesome.
Very good, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Sorry I missed it.
Well, yes, if you have any other questions, please reach out. Happy to assist you with anything, any follow-up that you might have questions about.
Okay, will do. Take
Okay,
care,
very
y'all have a
good.
good night.
You
You
too.
too.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll move to community builders introduction for the comp plan update.
Very good. So this evening we have Brooke Murphy with us. Very pleased to introduce her. She worked with us through the Building Better Places workshop that the county attended. And then we applied for technical assistance. And so Brooke is going to talk about these next steps and what we're really excited about that's coming up. So I'm gonna turn the presentation over to you, Brooke.
Great, thank you, Anne. Good evening, everyone. Like Anne said, I'm Brooke Murphy with Community Builders, and tonight I'm here to provide a brief update on the joint county-city, what we're calling a vision and comprehensive plan. And just know that your involvement and your support of this process will be really crucial to the success, but also to the strategic development to come out of this work. So really excited to be, get to know you all and be working with you all throughout this process. So major goals for tonight. Really, I want to provide an overview of, how and why we arrived at this integrated approach for a joint comp plan, which is not typical. And as this may be the first time for some of y'all going through a comprehensive planning process, I also just will really briefly go over like the role and the process of a comprehensive plan. And I'll finish off, on an update of where we are and what are the next steps in the process. So starting off, like big picture, why are we here and why are we talking about a comprehensive plan now? When we think about what the big idea is and why we're here, like many mountain communities, Lake County and Leadville are experiencing significant changes and pressures, which I think is probably no surprise to anyone. And it's important work to approach these changes and these pressures with clarity and with a long-term vision, so that we as a community can manage and steer our future development in ways that are really aligned with our values and our identity as a community. This is not easy to do. It's pretty challenging, even for the best of communities, and it's even more so when our communities bridge across jurisdictional boundaries, but also just within and between the different communities that make up our community. So considering the perspectives of newcomers and longtime residents, balancing our mining history with this new recreation economy, finding ways to provide housing while maintaining this community that we cherish. And how do we address all of these challenges while also preserving our environment and our quality of life? So, at its core, this project is about what do we want to look like in 10, 15, 20 years? And then how does that vision then guide or inform our land use and planning and regulations and things like that? Also, it's timely. The county approached us, our executive director, last year to start having these conversations about, how do we plan for, build a vision for the future. Ultimately, both the county and the city need new comprehensive plans. As an integrated approach, it's a really cool opportunity to address head-on some of these questions around what this looks like at the county and city nexus or the intersection. And how do we set up a framework for better collaboration, communication, coordination as a county and as a city in the future? So as I said, just for some of you, this may be background, but as a refresher, what is a comp plan? Like, what does it do? And how does it relate to other planning? So vision and comp plan really just outlines big ideas for how we'll manage growth and development over many, many years to protect and preserve community that we love. It typically includes, so it's a vision for the community's future, along with strategic priorities, goals, and strategies and actions to achieve the vision. So it's holistic, it's high level, it covers all aspects of city and county development, including, of course, land use. It's really a heavily land use focused document, but I think, as we all know, land use touches and influences pretty much everything else. So transportation, housing, economic development, environmental stewardship, those are typically pieces and big components of the comprehensive plan and vision plan. These plans are made by working, it's a pretty robust community engagement process. It has a time horizon of about 10 to 20 years, and they're periodically updated to reflect changing conditions and community priorities. At the state level, state statutes strongly encourage jurisdictions to update their comprehensive plan every 10 years. It does not enforce planning horizons, nor does it administer penalties if you go past that horizon. But having an older or very out-of-date plan really negatively affects or impacts your ability to go after public funding. They may turn you around and tell you to update your comp plan first and figure out your priorities. So that's why it's important to do this kind of stuff, even though it's not statutorily enforced. At the next level or the next layer of planning, it explains how the vision will be carried out in like a much more detailed way. So it involves more place-specific factors. So things like your zoning and development, regulations, urban design standards, historic preservation, street planning, all of those pieces that take the vision and say, this is how we're going to implement it on the ground. Underneath that, you have your policies, like I said, like your zoning and development code, your regulations for implementation, what that looks like and how it's enforced. Then you have your actions and investments, things like capital improvement plans, infrastructure plans, partnership and financing, public funding opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just kind of like the stratosphere of how all of these pieces fall together. Something else that I wanted to go over is what are some of the benefits of having an integrated approach in particular, and like why did we decide to complicate it in this way? And after a lot of the conversations that we've had with Ann and Chapin, we actually think that this, while it will be challenging, we think it'll really actually help simplify how we move forward. And address a lot of the challenges that are just inherent to community planning in general, but also to county and city coordination. So, some of the common challenges that occur are effective community planning, our effective process and community engagement. Investing heavily in community engagement and the process is really expensive, unfortunately, and requires a lot of capacity and resources. It's because of that reason, often the first thing to go, or it's kept at a minimum in most planning efforts. We held 3 public meetings at the courthouse, and that was our public engagement, component. We checked the boxes. Our approach for this project is very, very we think it turns on having the community involved. And the reason why is when you have heavy investment and heavy community engagement, you get really good community support and buy-in for projects and policy. And you build really good political will and partnerships and relationships for being able to enact the projects and everything that comes out of the process. So it's positioning yourself for success. Another frequent challenge is just coordination and alignment between the city and the county. This interface in particular, I think often experiences tension, some misalignment of vision and strategy, which again results in less than effective planning and less good development outcomes on the ground. Some of the opportunities, other benefits that we see for this approach is that, as Leadville thrives, so does Lake County, and vice versa. Despite these jurisdictional boundaries, the way that people experience community here is not by county and city. They share a community and a heritage. So by collaborating and working together on some of these critical challenges, and working towards shared goals and working through combined efforts and taking on the really difficult conversations, again, just positions both city and county as local jurisdictions, but also the community itself to really move forward in a really positive way. Also just allows us, because, city and county are both contributing resources to this project, as well as community builders contributing resources to help cover project costs, allows us to facilitate better public processes, allows us to increase our community involvement, do more stuff, have more events, talk to more people, and do it in some kind of creative ways and some cool ways. So just as a note there, by contributing resources, rather than being hired as a traditional consultant, Community Builders is unique. We're a nonprofit. We partner financially on projects with community. So what I mean by that is that we actually contribute resources to help cover project costs. So we're able to help leverage and augment local resources and help just those resources go further and get more. Some other key elements of our approach that I just wanted to touch on is we've been thinking through, like, how do we set ourselves up for success here? Like I said, it'll be challenging, but the results we believe are going to be really meaningful because we're focused on good process. It's a partnership. We, like I said, aren't consultants in the typical traditional sense, but we come in and we work alongside y'all and we work alongside community, because we're all in this together. So we don't come in and say, here's all of these best practice strategies, or we don't take all of the community input and go back to our laboratory and make all the strategies and actions and just give it back to you and say, here's your plan. It's really co-development and working together. Like I said, we also believe in really meaningful engagement. This project will require a high level of collaboration, not only between the city and the county, but also with all of these other really influential organizations and institutions that are instrumental parts of the community. And how do we build and strengthen those relationships and partnerships, nonprofits, et cetera. What does that actually look like? So this is our process. This is our approach. It's pretty flexible, but it gives this process pretty good structure that we found. We start off with groundwork. By groundwork, I mean, it's like setting up our scope, our approach, designing the systems, the tools to set us up for a successful project. That's where we've been for the last 2.5 months. We're moving into the second phase this fall, which is our assessment phase, assessment and values. So this is looking at, where are we today? What are the conditions on the ground? What are our precedent plans? What's our demographic data? What are our community assets, and taking an inventory, and then also looking at what are our community needs. Then we move into like this visioning piece, which is looking at, where do we want to be in the future? What does Leadville, Lake County look like in 10, 15, 20 years? And what direction are we moving in? From there, once we have this built, shared buy-in into this vision through a lot of this engagement work, and it's iterative. We move into the strategizing phase. This is where we break out and we find the strategic priorities, and we begin to build out like a task force action planning teams that help us take and develop these strategic priorities into a set of strategies, into a set of actions to take. This is where we talk about the programs and the policies and the next steps. And then the final phase is implementation. For us and how we like to work with communities is we don't hand you the plan and then leave. We also like to make sure that like you have an infrastructure or some capacity set up to actually move forward and start implementing. So that is something that we tack on kind of at the end, is making sure that, you know, this isn't a plan that just sits on the shelf. This is our working timeline, just to share. So we're kind of in groundwork, we're kind of wrapping it up. This fall will be an assessment. Through winter, we're imagining, or I'm anticipating, is our visioning work. March through May is kind of the strategizing work. Implementation is about a year out from now. So we anticipate this to be, you know, just over a year-long process. And, you know, before I have some here at the end, you know, we've done this in a lot of places. And I just wanted to really quickly cover 2 project examples just to illustrate like what this looks like. So the first one is Gunnison Valley. You know, and this project was, at its core, it was really an economic development strategy. But I mention it because it was regional. Brought together multiple municipalities as well as the county. And they were dealing with similar issues to you all. You know, they were struggling with change, and the jurisdictions didn't necessarily agree on how to address it, and they needed some help coming together. So this project was creating a forward-thinking vision for the region. We helped them design a process that really heavily leaned into grassroots and grass tops engagement through robust public involvement, and also help them establish the frameworks and structure for regional collaboration. What's really cool about this project is that those structures are actually still in place today. The project was completed in 2016. You know, they had a tremendous amount of success and really have become a model for regional planning. This is, oh, it's kind of small here. This is like what that plan included. So like I said, real emphasis on regional collaboration and how communities come together to enact this vision, but also work together better. So some of their priorities were resilient economy, affordable housing, community health and equity, and then tourism and recreation economy. The second example that I wanted to share is the town of Silverton. Super small community, I think about 700 full-time residents. We worked with them over the last, I think it was about a 2-year, maybe 1.5-year project. And I bring this up as an example. You know, the plan that we helped create with them, I think is a good example of what y'all are looking for, which is a community vision and this master plan or comprehensive plan. This project was really about bringing together the community to identify shared values, vision, and then build a strategy to make it happen. Move through. They were dealing with a lot of conflict and spiciness as a community over changes that were happening. So a lot of the work that we did was just helping guide and facilitate through tough conversations and work through rather than around conflict. And so these were some of the engagement techniques and processes that we used. throughout this, we did a webinar learning or community learning series where we talked about like, what do we mean by economic development? Like, what do we mean by housing? So that way we all had a shared language in order to talk about and work through some of these issues. We had small group discussions, we had like tabletop conversations. We really threw kind of the entire toolbox of community engagement to really work through some of these difficult conversations. So this is kind of, again, I provide this as an example. They had their community values. They laid out, you know, we laid out their goals, identified priority strategies, which was infrastructure, economy, housing, land use, environment, and this last one, building community trust and improving governance, really just about building civic capacity and also building, so by civic capacity, I mean being able as a community to work through tough stuff, and then you know, local government capacity, setting up the systems, the infrastructure in order to help increase our capacity just as, you know, local leadership. So these are, you know, their land use plan, their strategies and actions, you know, talking about land use, talking about zoning, and then moving on to implementation, identifying partners, identifying funding sources, setting up metrics for measuring success and tracking progress. So, what are our next steps and where are we at in the process? As I mentioned before, we're in between this groundwork and assessment. So we've been building teams, goals, systems, tools, focusing now on really building out what I'm calling like an engagement or an ambassador team of people who are really great connectors across the community that can help us think through an engagement and communication strategy. How we talk, like people, comprehensive planning is not something that is easily accessible. So how you talk about and communicate this stuff and how you approach communities about it is just so fundamental and challenging. So leaning into just like the local knowledge and connections is, we think is you know, sets us up for really good success. This next phase looking forward though, I think is super fun. This is assessment and values. So this is the public facing launch of the project, and taking into and doing all of this asset mapping, this needs assessment, looking at all of the precedent work. I know that a lot of stuff has been going on in the community and we don't want to be duplicative of anything, and pulling all of that in to help inform the next step of the comprehensive planning process, talking to you guys, just really talking to a ton of people. It's all I've been doing is talking. I don't know if you can tell from my voice. So that is where we are. Wanted to take a quick moment. I don't know how much time I have, maybe a couple extra minutes, but invite any questions that y'all have for me. And then I had 1 or 2 questions for you all if time allows for it. So first off, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ann.
That's okay. So Brooke, I have a question for you. The timeline and going through the different steps, what if along the way we find out that one of those steps needs a little more time? How would that be managed?
Yeah, great question. What's really great about our process and the fact that we also help put in the resources is that the most important thing is getting it right. What that means is that if something comes up that kind of derails us, or there's something really important that we haven't addressed that we didn't realize that we need to pull in, or we start getting feedback that we're like, oh, this isn't what we heard before, we really need to reassess what we've done so far, that we're able to do it. So I've set out 3 months kind of for each phase, but if it needs 5 months, then it needs 5 months. So that's something, you know, in terms of management wise, that we would have discussions about with this kind of project management team that we've built out between the county and the city and a few others, that will help us, you know, keep the train on the tracks, and we'll be checking in about what's going on. So if that ever comes up, those conversations will be had. And like I said, our approach is really flexible, so getting it right is the most important thing.
Thank you.
I would just say that when we were at the community builders workshop that we did before, and they went over some of these towns, like the Silverton one, and would you say they were spicy?
Very
I'm really
spicy.
excited I'm really excited to see how spicy you think we are. Cause it's gonna be spicy.
Four chilies.
I think that was one of the things that got us the most excited when we watched what you guys did for community engagement, because we do struggle with the disconnect of the people who live here working out of town, maybe not being able to be involved in, like, the whole town hall thing only goes so far. And I forget some of the examples, but it was like they held meetings at like a restaurant with like pizza and beer, and like they, you know, like they just made it so that all of these different events or these different community sessions were like accessible. And it definitely wasn't fitting the standard, like consultants coming to town and putting together something and handing it to you. It felt like we're all gonna have to put in the same amount of work and effort, and we're gonna be learning it all along the way. And I think in that process, that is where the city and county have the opportunity, if all of the stars align, to get aligned together. And also then to get the community to, for the most part, as much as possible, back each other up, you know. And I think that that's our best hope right now, because I think we're kind of spiraling in all sorts of different directions. So to get everybody on the same page and understanding those priorities, what should come first, I think this will be such a cool process. So I'm really psyched that you guys are helping us, and excited to be a part of the process for sure.
Great.
Yeah, just getting city personnel and county personnel at the same table will be huge.
Yeah.
And it'll be a challenge, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah, and Brooke, I know we've talked about this a little bit, but you know, something that is certainly on all of our minds at the county is our upcoming election and this unprecedented event of having 3 new county commissioners. So if you just maybe, you know, that is something that has been a focus of our conversation. So we wanna, and when we allude to some spiciness, that is certainly adding to you know, what's happening right now. So just wanted to share with the group, and if you wanted to add anything, Brooke, you know, that we've been really making sure that Brooke and Clark and Erica are really aware that is a general concern shared by everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. That is that falls under spicy, that falls under the 4 chilies. And we are approaching it and just trying to get in front of as many people as possible. Also inviting into conversations, you know, having one-on-ones with all the city councilors, and trying to be, you know, building, I think, the buy-in and like the hell yeah from all of the, you know, city and county staff, so that way if there is big turnover, we don't get totally derailed on this project, has been a really important component of our groundwork phase for sure.
Agreed.
Brooke, you said you had a couple of questions?
Yes, I do. So I wanted to, you know, get just from you all, what would you hope to see, or what would you like to see come out of this process, or out of a comprehensive plan? Like, what would success be to you?
It'll be interesting, and I'm sure you've seen this 100 different times, but the city's priorities and the county's priorities sometimes are at odds with each other. So it'll be interesting to see how we can get both sides to see common ground.
I think for me, the priorities is, comp plan is important and all of those things, but I think what we've struggled the most with in understanding how to even take that visionary comp plan and put it into, our everyday, code amendments and such, is that priority, the levels of priorities have never been really, we're just throwing all of the priorities in this document, and then everybody's using it, but then somebody picks out, well, see, this is important because it's in here, but it may not be more important than this other priority that's in there. And so really, for me, I would really like there to be a lot of emphasis on understanding priorities and understanding that I think it's okay if what comes out of this is that the city has slightly different priorities than the county. What I think that could and should work is that they complement each other. It's like, so the city's priority may be here, which it's not the county's, which is great, because then it happens in the city. And maybe over here, the industrial part, for instance, is is more of a county priority than it is a city priority. So I think that there's ways that works, but for me personally, I think what I've struggled with all the years, and even doing our last comp plan process and feeling like, yeah, great, we created this pretty document and that's beautiful, and we do reference it when we do things, but at the end of the day, nobody's on the same page as far as that priority list. So I know that that's probably the hardest part of this whole process, is creating those priorities, but community priorities, but to me, that's also the most important part of the process.
So
Yeah.
it'll be it'll be interesting with the county commissioners doing what they're doing, but something that I'm not sure we had last time that we definitely have this time is 2 fully functioning planning departments. The city didn't have one last time at all, and the county's was very different than it is now. So these 2 fully staffed departments with leaders that actually understand what they're doing, I think will develop some mutual respect for the city and county government. At least that's the hope. Be very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Yeah, I think that was one of the first things that, we applied for the technical assistance, the county, we did the building better places, but we immediately, as soon as we got back, and even when we were at the workshop, we identified that this needed to, happen, and we were so excited that the capacity was at the city and the time was just right. So we are in like this kind of amazing, space right now. Yes, we have all of these, things in front of us, these challenges in front of us. However, I don't think we've been ever positioned as well as we are right now to start diving into it. So, and without the community builders, of course.
Yeah, Chapin and Ann have been a model for collaboration, which has been great.
Good. Chapin makes it easy.
And I think my final question for y'all would be, in thinking through like who are good connectors in the community, or who needs to be and should be brought to the table or approached about this. Getting some ideas for that would be great. So to pose the question, who do you think are good communities, ambassadors, or connectors for us to reach out to? And kind of part B's, who really needs to be brought to the table and really involved and engaged in some of these conversations?
I jump in, Brooke, that you're probably aware of our like community composition, and that we're like 35 to 40% Latinx, and making sure that you have an ambassador or several ambassadors from that community that is usually underrepresented in these conversations, and that is a challenge, and I think that I would love to see community builders overcome and find creative solutions to.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that we've been, as we've been contemplating how do we reach out to people who don't feel invited or comfortable, or how do we design events that are also like culturally relevant? and being really intentional about that, and also like tapping into this really strong grass tops network that Lake County and Leadville have of groups that do capacity building and coalition building and all of that work, and bringing them in and really enabling them to be part of this process. So yeah, that's certainly something that we've been thinking through and being really intentional about.
Awesome, thank you.
It'd be interesting to see if we can do that without relying on the nonprofits directly. I mean, actually getting some direct communication rather than just relayed communication.
So the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, their new, I'm on the board, so our new, direction is, to take more of a facilitation role within the community. So I don't know if you've already kind of explored that or heard about it, but, it is, the idea centers around creating, what we're calling the EDC Steering Committee, which they've identified some of the key initial stakeholders and mostly that's like decision makers. So reps from county, city, school district, I think there was like 6 people they identified, and then they've slowly added a few people, like, so they have, Carly for nonprofits. So anyway, there's this group and the idea is to like start having some conversations so that there can be more collaborative planning rather than siloed conversations about items. It's in its super beginning stages. They've already run into, they've got people at the table. Today we had a meeting and they're really excited because they have people at the table, but they are not necessarily on the same page, in the same book, maybe even. So but because they have brought already this group together that's kind of said, okay, we're committed to doing this and we're on board. Finding out who Tamara has as those key stakeholders, and also so that once again, they're not siloing and doing the same work we're doing.
Yeah.
Might be like, hey, can we bring you guys in on this? We don't want you guys necessarily working on community vision / comp plan stuff, because they did bring that up today. We need to get that group involved in the comp plan. So I think, yes, we want that group involved in the comp plan, but we want you guys to be steering that in this direction.
Yeah.
So working with Tamara on that, I think would be a good soon step.
It's Tamara Jennings, correct?
Jenlick, yeah. Jenlick.
Okay. Yes, I don't have her contact information yet, but I do have her on my list of people to talk to. If one of you is able to share that with me, that would be, at some point,
Yeah.
that would be great. Maybe Anne can do that.
And we've got her contact if we could send it over.
Yeah, I've got it here, I'll send it to you.
In the chat, okay, she's gonna.
Okay, I'm gonna email you her contact info right now.
Perfect. Yeah, that was something that that has come up, and I think that's great. I didn't realize that they're setting a direction for more facilitated kind of community stuff, so that's great to know. And I know that there's quite a few economic development groups that are, I think, Main Street, you have a URA, and the EDC. So yeah, being able to pull in, I think a big theme of this work, right, will be coming together to coordinate and set some priorities and have some of those conversations, so. Well, I don't want to take up the rest of your evening, but I will, I might send a follow-up, and if there are any other groups or people that you think would be really great to involve, extremely value your insight and your input. So I'll reach out and see if any other names and groups come to mind, but really appreciate your time and your involvement. tonight, and know that you'll be part of this process and you'll be engaged throughout, and excited to be working with you all.
Thank you, I'm excited too.
Yes, thank you so much, Brooke. This is gonna be an amazing scope of work. So, and we've got, I'm sure we're gonna have a few people too that we would like to send over your direction to, that I'm not sure exactly where you're at yet in kind of talking to them. So I have a few ideas as well. And we'll get those shot out over tomorrow to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ann. Thank you all. Have a good night. I'll be in touch. You'll see me again soon.
Thanks, Brooke. Good to
Thank
meet
you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Cool, I'm super excited about this, this is
I think
fantastic.
it's gonna
Sounds
be,
awesome, yeah.
they are,
Well, and some of the community people were at the community builder, like some of the Silverton people, and then some of the one, I mean, that, if you think about the Gunnison Valley one, you're talking about Crested View, Gunnison, you know, all of them, and trying to get them all together,
And
you
that was
know.
8 or 10 years ago.
And
They've
they're
still got
still
some initiatives
doing
going, that's great.
yeah.
They're still doing stuff, so I just feel like it's finally something different than a consultant. So I'm excited for this process because I do think it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be a lot more hands-on for us, which means more commitment from everybody, but I think it'll be super well worth it.
I think it's exciting. I think when we went to the workshop, you know, we were just like surrounded by people that were back there because of, you know, the great work that had already been achieved with the help of community builders, and they were back for more.
Continue it
Yeah,
along the
like,
way.
it's like,
Mhm.
you know, this is great, let's keep building on it, and the women, and then just to be able to have those, you know, those difficult conversations that, you know, have been lingering. And so I like the idea that they work through it,
Mhm.
not around it.
Me too. Yeah, there
Super
are
excited.
lots of conversations about priorities right now that we all could use some help on, so.
And we spent a lot of time at the workshop just talking about how for the last couple of years, it just feels like we've been going 100 miles an hour, trying to keep up and say, oh, we don't have one of those, oh, we don't have one of those, oh, we should be doing this, oh, we have to do that.
Yeah,
And
trying to
so,
keep
like,
up with the impact and
trying
growth and all
to
the things.
get a better, more cohesive approach.
Mhm.
And so we're not being duplicative, or we're, you know, we're really prioritizing the right things, that's huge. So excited, very, very excited.
Cool. Any other questions, comments before, or a motion to adjourn?
Edwards motions to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Yep, and there were
Aye.
three. Oh, there was Jason, sorry. Hi,
Thank you, Jason.
Jason, hi.
All right, good night, everybody.
Thank you.